Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, sorry I'm a little bit later than normal this morning. I set my alarms as their normal times, but I forgot that I'm in the mountain time zone down here in Phoenix. So we're getting off to a little bit of a late start. But here's the main stories that we are watching right now. Kind of the first panel is what you're looking at here is a 5-day sliding window of temperature anomalies. So here's the next 5 days. Here's day 5 through 10, and here's day 10 through 15. And so one of the big stories we're following is this significant moderation in the temperatures that's going to happen as a lot of cold air goes back to parts of Alaska and Greenland here, and the Pacific jet starts to kind of flood the United States with a lot of mild air. It helps that the jet stream in the North Atlantic is going to line out like this. It's going to come in the Pacific like that, and that's just not a configuration to kind of dig deep cold air through the center part of North America. So this massive Arctic outbreak we've been enduring now for quite some time is got some, kind of an expiration date set on it. And as far as we can tell, looking out there, even into day 10 through 15, most of the U.S. stays mild. But we'll be watching this. There are some things changing out there once we get fully into the month of February that it's going to make for a kind of a challenging forecast into early February as to when and if colder air is able to return and what it means in terms of snow. Now, speaking of snow, this is our 48-hour accumulation graph. So we're still capturing here the heavy snows that came through parts of the Mid-South, right over the top of Tennessee, where there was places that picked up over 8 inches of snow, then hit the Blue Ridge and Appalachian Mountains, and then you can see the interior heavy amounts that were kind of accumulated in New England. So overall, the models were doing a good job at the placement of the snow, but some of those predictions for really heavy snows in through here of over 4 to 6 inches did bust right here in parts of like New Jersey and New York City and places like that. The lake effect snow is going to be interesting to watch over the next few days as it starts to reorient its position rather than coming off the downwind side of the lakes being on their eastern side. They're going to actually switch to be the southern side. We're going to watch for a little bit more snow to be coming out of the out of the northwest, sliding across the Midwest. But the thing I'll be thinking most about with that temperature pattern change is how much of this here east of the Rocky Mountains is going to be melting with the milder conditions. The snowpack that's deep into the Cascades, the Rockies, and the Sierra Nevada, it's safe. It's gonna be there as the mild air comes in, but a lot of this is going to start to melt. So we'll be keeping an eye on how much of that gets down into the subsurface soil moisture. For example, this is our newest map on the root zone soil moisture going down 40 inches or 100 centimeters. I just want to see how much of this starts to restore some of the longer term problems of drought throughout parts of the Midwest. And then also, how does it affect river flooding? Because the Mississippi this morning was nearly 15 feet above low stage. So just a massive jump up lately as all of the last 10 days worth of moisture kind of gets into the river systems and eventually funnels past Memphis as it works its way toward the Gulf of Mexico. Next big story that I'm watching is this system right here. So I mentioned it and its potential impact on snow. Well, here it is coming in on the infrared satellite. There is today the risk of ice and very strong winds in parts of the Pacific Northwest, specifically Oregon and Washington border. This one's also spreading some snow to Montana. It's going to put a little bit of snow right in the midsection of the United States. But it's kind of neat to watch this animation just because of how cold the ground was last night in comparison to the cloud tops. I mean, there's very cold air at the surface, and that's just, I always like to see this. In fact, you can even see the effect of the snow. Watch this again. See that? That's kind of the impact of the snow cover right in that area showing up as quite cold. As we go forward, like I said, that ice storm today, we look at the probability of getting at least 1/10 of an inch of ice, pretty high through this quarter, but the potential for ice exists all the way up here to Seattle, even up toward Vancouver. And then, as I mentioned on the snow, the swath will be somewhere in this vicinity. What we're looking at here is the chance of getting at least 2 inches. We'll dig a little bit deeper into the amounts in a few moments. But that's kind of the second bigger story that we're following. I do want to mention that winds with the next system that rolls through are going to be quite strong throughout the Pacific Northwest. And then just take note of what they're going to be like coming off kind of the peaks of the Rockies here. Very, very strong downslope winds. These are sometimes quite dangerous in their speed. And then the southern plains, we're expecting to have some gusty winds out of this next system as well. Finally, I just want to mention the third story is starting around the 22nd, we're going to watch the Gulf open back up in all three of our major forecasting kind of systems here, the CPC, the European model, and the GFS. High pressure begins to settle over the parts of the southeast, and that just opens up early next week to that warmth and then a pretty deep draw on the moisture out of the Gulf. So we're going to potentially see a whole lot more rainfall getting added to places that, one, are going to have melting snow, and two, have already been saturated with rainfall lately. Okay, with that as kind of the bigger picture, let's talk about some kind of updated maps on a few of the metrics we've been watching. This is our season-to-date snowfall map. Now, this was valid through yesterday, midday, on Tuesday, and it's a percent of normal. So while the West has started to pick up better snow, you can see the Cascades sitting right about their historical average. Heavier snows have kind of snuck through this area at times throughout the season. The Sierra Nevada are anywhere between 20 and 50% of normal snowpack. We need quite a bit more. The kind of snow deficits that have been throughout Montana and pockets of the Northern Rockies, while we are adding some now, we need to see quite a bit more snow in this area and just to get moisture back into this very dry section, of the U.S. Unlike a year ago, the northern plains and upper Midwest of the United States, where all the snow was a year ago, are sitting, some places less than a third of normal snow. In fact, there's some places that are snow-free right now in this area. But our main snow track has been here in the Central Plains, Kansas and Nebraska, into Iowa, Missouri, northern Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And so if you're just a bit south of where that rain-snow line was, there's a quadrant in through here that's like, how do I keep getting missed? Because the last big system rolled through here, and you can see that some of those amounts, they're just, compared to average, they're 200 to 300% of the seasonal average through this point. So it's just important, I think, to keep an eye on these overall metrics. Still another pretty chilly morning here at 6:30 Central Time, but we know this colder air does have, it's on its last legs. We'll be watching it really get out of here after its second pulse comes through Thursday, Friday, and early Saturday morning, and then the rest of the weekend moderates and a lot more mild air comes back in. But again, it's kind of fun just to see the effect of Lake Michigan being ice-free and warm. Just take a look at the temperatures in Wisconsin versus Michigan. And this morning we got some pretty cold air all the way down here into central Florida. This is Orlando. Got down to actually got colder than this. This is 6:30 in the morning, so the sun had been up for a little bit, but down there in the low 40s. So we had a hard freeze watch pretty far to the south because of this colder air, and that kind of brings us to our all hazards weather map. We've now seen the wind chill advisories kind of peel off a bit farther to the east. This is all hard freeze watch. And you can see all the way down here, we had a freeze watch this morning into this part of Florida. Now, much of the attention in terms of the adverse weather is going to turn here to the Pacific Northwest. We have the ice storm warning still in place, winter storm warnings out for broad sections here of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And again, remember I talked about those very strong winds. These are all high wind watches, warnings, and advisories coming off of the mountains. We're going to have to be very careful of how strong these winds are going to be. So from here, let's go and have a look at the bigger picture. So I'm going to take you from this top-down view. We're going to go right to the North Pole, and I want you just to watch the evolution of the height pattern. So we end up getting an interesting setup over the Aleutian Islands or the Bering Sea, where we've got, it kind of appears to be an omega block, but I'm going to tell you it's not blocked. It doesn't get stuck like this for 10 straight days. But there is a highly amplified pattern here, and there's a southern tier of this branch of the jet stream. I think it's going to dominate. It's going to sneak just on the southern side of these two troughs. While that's occurring, we're going to watch the jet stream line out over the Atlantic Ocean. We talked about that a lot yesterday with the North Atlantic Oscillation. And as we play it forward into this weekend, you already see the moderation of that pattern. Do you notice how we lose the connection? The ridge keeps moving back toward Siberia. And what happens here is that through this weekend and into early next week, this is just stronger onshore flow coming into the west. So it means multiple, I would say, I don't want to say it, they're weaker systems. It's not the deep, big, monstrous lows that can pile up tremendous amounts of moisture, but it's going to be wet in the west. Meanwhile, the rest of the country does get a bit of a break from this as we go into the weekend and into early next week. So by next Tuesday, Wednesday, our idea here is that we're going to kind of extend out this longer stretch of maybe less adverse weather until we get to about next Tuesday. And at that point, you can see the flow comes into California and rolls across the country like this. Now, these warmer colors do represent higher heights in the atmosphere, which means there's pretty significant warm-up happening here. But what will be occurring is a high-pressure cell at the surface will be sitting somewhere in this vicinity, and it's going to open up the moisture and start to just pull in through the Mississippi Valley, getting into parts of the Central Plains, extending into the Midwest, all the way to the Great Lakes. Chances of getting rain out of this. So our break didn't last that long for those of you that have been in this section of the country enduring quite a bit of adverse weather. So let's just play this out though. Let's get out a week and then get out there a bit farther. And there you can really see the depth of that trough that kind of just hangs out down down here in Mexico and Texas, that just opens up to a multi-day event starting next Tuesday of bringing in moisture. So this is next Thursday, getting into Friday and Saturday. And by that time, what we see is this milder, longer range forecast is because we've built back in lower heights or colder conditions, in these two areas. So you put ridges there, it's all cold in the midsection of the country. You put troughs there, then it's more mild. So the flow isn't so active right in the near term. Yeah, we're watching the northwest. Yeah, there's some snow coming through. Sure, there's some lake effect. But our next big chance at having a lot of moisture return is going to be after the 22nd, moving through about the 22nd through the 27th. Beyond that, to finish off the end of the month, the pattern's still relatively mild. And what we're going to be waiting on is a bit of a reset going into February. And I'm going to be honest with you, I can't pin down February just yet. I see some signals, which we'll talk about in a moment, as to return of cold air and an active winter pattern, but when is really challenging. And we'll just show you that again and kind of provide a quick update on that. All right, so let's get into the models. Ready? This is starting up at 8 o'clock this morning Central Time. And again, we're going to watch right in through here. The risk of the ice accumulation could be getting up towards Seattle area as well. But outside of that, we've got some good snow that's coming in here. We'll play through Wednesday afternoon and evening, and you'll just see quite a bit of snow piling up here in parts of Montana and Idaho, and then some lighter snow coming out into the plains that'll eventually make it into the western Corn Belt. We'll see some snow across this section of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. The lake effect still goes. And then late in the day tonight and early tomorrow morning, there's a little system that's trying to sneak out of the Arklatex region. And as it does that, it could push on Thursday right here into Kentucky, where I'll be. So I'm going to Bowling Green tonight, and I'll be there at the Kentucky Commodity Conference tomorrow. And of course, I'm going to bring with me the risk of some ice in this area. So we need to keep a very close eye out as the cold air overruns that snowpack, which is going to keep the surface temperatures cold. As the warm air overruns that snowpack where the surface temperatures are cold. And while that happens, we got a little bit of snow moving through parts of Iowa into Illinois to kind of join up with this once we get into late Thursday evening. So playing out there into early Friday, notice the northwest continuing to see the mixed precipitation because of the cold air that's anchored near the surface and the flow. There's just going to be continual flow, not just through Friday, but all the way through next week in the west. But broader snow's coming across the Ohio Valley here in the eastern Great Lakes. And if you notice, the lake effect snow changes direction as this low curls up. So if it's going to be sitting somewhere in this vicinity, the flow on the backside will cut across the lakes like this, and you get this long axis lake effect snow band that comes across Lake Michigan. And what's fun about this is you end up getting what are called lake effect vortices. So watch for this on Thursday into Friday, especially Friday, I think, to get some lake effect vortexes or vortices spinning up. They're really kind of fun to watch, and it could deliver some really heavy snows on the end of the lakes as this moves into parts of New England. Again, though, look at the ice conditions that are here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got to keep an eye on this scenario because this ice here is, I've told you this in the past, but of all the types of weather that are out there, ice is just, it's the one I fear the most because of what it does to our transportation systems, what it does to just damage infrastructure like trees and power lines. I just don't like to see ice like this. Okay, from there, I do want to flip over to the GFS versus the European. Let's just kind of get past where we've already seen with the high-res NAM. I think the NAM's done a good job of picking up on that. So here we are, Friday midday, getting into Saturday. High pressure dives into the country. You got the lake effect snow on one side. You got the really cold air that comes in with this back in the plains. And notice the west just onshore flow. So just more moisture coming in throughout top to bottom. The west coast is going to be getting some precip out of this. Now, as we talked about yesterday, that high pressure sun moves over the southeast. See it? And as it slides into the southeast by Sunday into Monday, it just turns the pattern around. We start to open up flow out of the Gulf. The west continues to see heavier precipitation, but we open up that Gulf flow. And so starting next Monday night into Tuesday, the models still aren't settled on exactly how this is going to take shape, but we've now been talking about it all week. It just opens up to a few days. Watch that again. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's 4 days of moisture coming out of the Gulf. And at times it could be just very, very wet. We'll be talking about the risk of storms next week with this, but overall it's pushing a lot of mild air pretty far to the north. So we've already started to capture that in our models. This is the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, so you can now get a better idea. Just take a look at this color bar here and then get a better idea what's coming into the west. This is all going to be snow through right in here initially. And then this is next Tuesday, Wednesday, the opening up of the flow coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Good news is we get a little bit of a stretch in through here of some drier weather, which is needed to let things kind of calm down after all the heavy rainfall. But let's go ahead and compare it to the European. So this is just total precipitation, only going to take it out a week. And we'll pause it right about here just to get an idea on that next 7 days worth of total precip. So a lot of this is coming starting next Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's what we're seeing here. But again, pretty good agreement with what's going on in the west as well. Here's the GFS, same time period. It's actually even wetter across parts of the south. And then watch this. The GFS is really opening up to some heavy precip coming down here to coastal Texas and Louisiana. Remember, this is an area that has been deep in drought, so that's going to really continue to work against that longer range issue. But using an operational model out there beyond 5, 6, 7 days is not wise, and so we'll flip over to the ensembles in a moment. I do want to show you, the snow from the European model. So let's just take it out there 7 days, and again, 1 to 2 inches are possible in through here. The lake effects can be really impressive to watch shift directions. Could get some good snows in parts of West Virginia, and another good coating of 1 inch or 2 in parts of New England, but heaviest on the downwind side of the lakes. But then we note back into parts of the Rockies here, heavier snows, 4 to 10 plus inches, and then the Cascades, which see quite a bit of flow coming through. Still another 20 to 40 inches are expected here. The Sierra Nevada getting in on this as well over the next 7 days. Here's the GFS just for comparison, so European and GFS. And let's go ahead and have a look at some of the ensemble data here. So I'm going to show you an animation of the probability of getting at least 1 inch of liquid. Okay, so this is just 1 inch of what we call liquid equivalent. And what you're going to note is that through the next 5 days, the flow is all here. That's where the wettest conditions are. Most of the rest of the country not adding a whole lot. But starting next Monday night into Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, look at how these probabilities really begin to grow as we get out there toward day 10. So that's the 22nd through the 27th, opening the Gulf and adding quite a bit more moisture. Who's going to be really wet on this? Let's see if we can get this to load here. My internet's a bit slow this morning in the hotel. We got a model run in, of course, because I'm a little late. Let's get this out there to about day 10. That's too far. There we go. This is good enough. We can see high probabilities west, still 50 to 90% chance of getting 2 inches here. And if we go ahead and step this up to 4, if it'll load for me real quick, there's some really good chances here of some extremely wet weather down across our Gulf Coast and in the Pacific Northwest. On the snowy side of it, here's the chance of getting at least 1 inch over the next 10 days. If I stretch this out to 3 inches, we'll probably get the new model run come in here. Yep, there it is. And let's go back and just give you that same time frame. Somewhere in there. This is the chance of getting 3 inches in the next 10 days. So I like this. We need this snow. But there's a lot of parts here of the Canadian Prairie and the Northern Plains that have missed out. We step this up to 6 inches and then up to 12. You can see our biggest snows are going to be here in the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, Northern Rockies. All right, as I mentioned, starting next Tuesday, okay, look at the broader trough coming in and making that turn. So this is what's going to use this high pressure cell to open this all up to better moisture. And we just see that happening through next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even into early next weekend. Then the flow kind of falls apart a bit for the rest of the country, and we just keep the stronger subtropical jet rolling into this area. The Pacific jet retracts back this direction, and that's why the week 2 forecast, which we saw a little bit earlier, start to slow things down in California. Keep a little bit wetter conditions in the Northwest, but we're just seeing the tail end here in the week 2 forecasts of what starts next Tuesday, Wednesday, and lasting through the weekend. That's why this continues to show up wetter, and then the subtropical jet into this area is what's also promoting the wetter conditions here too. All right, on the temperature side of it, here's today's temperatures, pretty cold, high temperatures for today for much of the U.S. Here's wave number 2 of that cold coming in on Friday. And then what we're going to watch is getting into Saturday. That gets pretty far into the south with highs barely getting out of the 50s in parts of Florida. Single digits to possibly not even getting above 0 in parts of almost centered right on Omaha here is the coldest air. But that's out. There's Sunday leaving, Monday, and Tuesday. Much more mild air comes in. And just like the GFS showed, here's the European model solution. We're sliding out there day 5 through 10, which is right here, and then day 10 through 15. What we're going to be watching after that is the return possibly of some colder air building up into western Canada. It might take a while for that to sink into the central United States. Maybe we have to get pretty far into the month of February. But every long-range model I could show you right now would only add confusion to this pattern. And what I think is going to be interesting to watch is I think it'll come out later today, if not today, tomorrow. The Climate Prediction Center is going to update their new 1-month and 3-month forecasts to kind of mimic what we've been discussing with the European and the NMME. So we'll look all the way out there when that data arrives at the spring and summer forecasts from them. And we'll also wait for the end of this week to see what they're predicting for the kind of beginning of February. We'll get that out of their week 3, week 4 update. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that. But I've been talking over their week 2 forecast. So mild, and you can see the wetter conditions. What's causing some, I think, just difficulty in the forecast is kind of the relationship between the tropics and the extratropics. And I still think the MJO, which I've talked about all week, so I won't go into it again, is going to be the most dominant factor. We're certainly moving through these milder phases now. We expect to get back over here at some point. But when do we have that happen in the month of February? The other part about this is these phases 4 and 5, where the MJO is now, are the drier phases for the Brazilian monsoon. So that's why it's drier in northern Brazil right now, wetter in southern Brazil, and wetter in Argentina. But every long-range forecast continues to show this. This is the GFS extended forecast that goes from January 20th to February 20th, and it's very wet in this area. Okay, these are precipitation anomalies. Drier south, not an issue in Argentina given the moisture they've had. Not an issue in Rio Grande do Sul that you see the drier conditions here. But it is very, very wet, and that's the GFS, and this is the European solution. So when I start to see this, it gets me thinking just about what the implications of that are going to be on harvest progress. And I just want to show you, if you go out there to February 20th, based on history, we would expect by February 20th, which is about here, that Mato Grosso should have about 60% of its crop harvested. Their head pace right now, given the drier conditions and that are currently there this week, and the early planted stuff coming out. But I want to know about that mid-planted, the late-planted, and the replanted as to its speed coming out. And I just wonder if we're going to take this line, which is above normal here, and watch it drop off like this later. I'm just curious about that, so we'll keep an eye on it. But that's what I got for you this morning. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.